We're talking the worst of the worst, the roughest of the roughest, the cream of the crop, or the bottom of the barrel. However you want to look at it, it's extreme. Extreme! Extreme! This is my Mountain Dew version of the horror movie syllabus. We're talking about the extreme horror in the horror movie syllabus today. Extreme! Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the horror movie syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and downright notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the horror movie syllabus, I highly recommend you check out our introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below, and it's going to give you everything you need to know about the horror movie syllabus and how it works. But I'll just tell you real quick, we're going to look at a particular subgenre of horror and then examine 3 specific movies from that subgenre. Today, we are talking about extreme horror. And as my ridiculous cold open alluded to, this really is kind of the roughest of the rough. This is the stuff that is not for everybody, not for the faint of heart. There are a lot of horror fans out there that can love horror but don't love this stuff. There's a lot of people out there that can't take it or just don't want to even see it. And I respect that. This is not for everybody. You kind of need to have a strong constitution and a thick skin for that, for this kind of stuff. And we've talked a little bit about these movies, these types of movies in the past. We've talked about some pretty extreme stuff, and we will in other subgenres too, because as I've noted before, the subgenres bleed into another quite a bit, which makes the syllabus a lot of fun. Again, check out the introduction video if you want more explanation of how this works. But the syllabus, doesn't repeat movies, so you got to figure out where to put them. And so extreme movies wind up being peppered throughout the syllabus, and we'll talk about them quite a bit. We've already talked about a few of them. These are ones, though, that I felt really have reputation for being some of the most well-known, notorious, extreme, upsetting, disturbing, graphic movies that there are. And you will probably be able to think of other ones. The hardcore horror fans will definitely say, well, what about this? What about this? Great. That's what the comments are for. Looking forward to seeing what you have to say. We're going to look at some of the ones that are extremely well-known, notorious. That's the word I like to use for it. And again, this ain't for all of you. And it's okay. It's okay if these movies are not your bag, if they offend you or bother you, or they're just too gross, or for whatever reason you're not into this. That's cool. And if you are super into this, that's cool too. A little weird maybe, but it's cool. Most of the movies we're going to talk about today, I really, really, really like. And we'll get into it. There's 1 or 2 that I don't. But suffice to say, I feel a little uneasy about this one because I know this one can really be upsetting for some people. Some of these movies really bother some people, and for good reason. They tend to be somewhat of endurance tests. It's almost kind of like horror badges of honor. Like, oh, I got through this movie. Now I never want to watch it again. And that's one thing I will say is the rewatchability of most of these movies is not very high. So, without just harping on just how creepy or unsettling or whatever these movies are, why don't we just go ahead and start getting into it? As usual, we've organized them into undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate levels. And in this case, level of extremity. The more we go on, the more extreme they're going to get. So buckle up, kids. It's going to be a bumpy ride. The first movie that we're going to talk about today, the undergraduate level selection, is Antichrist. Antichrist is a 2009 film directed by Lars von Trier, and the title may be misleading because it really doesn't have anything to do with theology, religion, or the devil, or anything like that. If you're unfamiliar with it, if you haven't seen it, the movie is about a couple whose young child dies in an accident while they are distracted, and the overwhelming feelings of guilt and depression that they are trying to sort out. The husband, being a therapist, takes the wife out to the woods to try some experimental therapy to try to help cope with their loss. Does not go well. And that's all we'll say about it in case you might want to check this out and don't want it spoiled for you. But Antichrist is notoriously well known for being a rough and bumpy ride for good reason. It's also an incredibly well made movie. And to talk about that, we need to start with talking about Lars von Trier. And I'm not sure, but I don't think we've actually spoken about him yet in the syllabus. But von Trier is a controversial filmmaker, to say the least. I won't go too into like his personal stuff, like his actual, like who he is as a person, all that stuff. There's some potentially troubling things about that too. Let you guys explore that on your own. Let's just talk about his films because there's enough controversy to talk about there. He makes some incredibly challenging films, and he's not exactly a mainstream director, at least not in America. The most mainstream he ever got is a movie called Dancer in the Dark that starred Bjork, the singer Bjork, and if you've seen that, you kind of get an idea of why Von Trier might be controversial. His movies are challenging, to say the least. They are confrontational. They get into some extremely taboo areas, and they are unflinching. And Antichrist exemplifies all of that. Antichrist is also part of Von Trier's self-proclaimed depression trilogy. It's not a real trilogy. These stories have nothing to do with each other, but they were all made while he was going through a severe depression, and it shows. Those other two movies are Melancholia, which is a beautiful, gorgeous, fantastic movie, and Nymphomaniac, which is not as sexy as you think it is, and is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant, but relentlessly depressing. They're all fantastic movies. I like them very, very much. Antichrist is the one that's probably the most pure horror. And it really is largely a drama for like a good hour or more of the movie. It really is a story of this couple who's lost their son and are feeling tremendously guilty about it. And how are they coping with it? And it's just sad. It's just sad, sad, sad. It's depressing. Depression trilogy indeed. It's really, really depressing. Then they go to the woods and things go nuts. It gets insane in wildly graphic ways. And that's one of the things that makes this movie so notorious is the graphic sex and graphic violence. And I mean pornographic sex, quite literally. There are pornographic inserts into the movie. And graphic violence to the level of which you probably have never seen and never will see again. Specifically, at the risk of spoiling the movie slightly, but you kind of need to know, the genital mutilation in this movie is so extreme and so insanely graphic. That's where the movie gets its reputation, is mostly from that. It's deeply, deeply, deeply unsettling, shocking. You can know about it like I did when you see the movie, and you will still be shocked. I guarantee it. It's just that graphic. It's in your face. It's right there. Von Trier is not afraid to slap you in the face with imagery. In fact, he's known for it. He loves to do it, and he does it in this movie. And it's very effective. The movie is fantastic. I think it's exceptional. Von Trier makes kind of art house type films, and we can debate whether or not he is a successful artist. I tend to think that he is. I think his movies tend to be very artistic and works of art, and this is one of them for sure. It's beautifully shot. The way he composes a scene is exceptional. The tone and feel of the movie, unrelentingly depressing, but that's what he's going for. Succeeds. He slam dunks it. And the performances from the stars William Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsborough are exceptional. Charlotte in particular, she's been in a few of Von Trier's movies. She is such an underrated actress, and she is so good. She's such a brave actress. Does some shocking and unsettling things. The things she puts herself through physically, emotionally. If you thought that Shelley Duvall gave a tour de force performance in The Shining, which she did, you got to see Charlotte Gainsborough in Antichrist, or in Nymphomaniac for that matter. Just fantastic actress, and of course Willem Dafoe is Willem Dafoe. He's always bringing it. So the actors really bring this movie a quality and a realness, a rawness that just makes it that much more effective. This movie is brilliant. It's incredibly well made. It has something to say. Whether that message is important or not is up to the individual viewer, but I do think that it's not just like exploitation schlock. Von Trier likes to shock you. He likes to, like I said, slap you in the face. He wants to be controversial and shocking and gross and everything like that. But generally speaking, he's also trying to say something. And he may not always know what he's trying to say or maybe express it as clearly as he needs to. And I'll agree with people who would criticize him in general and this movie in particular for that. But I do think that he moves you. This movie moved me. If great art is supposed to make you feel something and move you, this movie definitely succeeds. It sticks with you. It sticks with me now. Like, I have not revisited this movie, but I remember it extremely well, and I remember how I felt watching it. And it hangs with you, for better or for worse. It hangs with you. If you haven't seen Antichrist, hopefully I've done enough to, without spoiling it too much, inform you as to whether or not you want to watch it. I'm not telling anybody to watch anything today. It may or may not be for you. I'm telling you why I like the movie, if I like it, and kind of what it's about, and why I think it might be important or noteworthy, and then letting you make your own decisions today. And so, make your own decision on Antichrist. It's a rough watch, but it will move you. You will feel something. You will. It'll be depressing. You might want to watch something really, really. Throw on Pitch Perfect afterwards or something. But Antichrist, it's a rough ride, but it's a really great movie. The next movie that we're talking about today, our graduate level selection, is Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom. Now, Salo, and I'm not 100% sure that I'm pronouncing that correctly, but we're going to go with it because that's where the accent mark is on it, came out in 1975, and it is an adaptation of The 120 Days of Sodom, the book by the Marquis de Sade. More on that in a minute. If you're not familiar with the movie or the book, it's about four Italian libertines, very powerful men, who kidnap a bunch of children and hold them up in a villa in Italy, and subject them to all sorts of psychological, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse and trauma. Yeah. That's a pretty accurate depiction of what's going on in this movie. Um, yeah, it's as disturbing as it sounds. The movie, as I mentioned, is based on the Marquis de Sade book, The 120 Days of Sodom, which, if I recall correctly, he wrote while imprisoned. And it was like in 1780 something. And it wasn't released till like over 100 years later. And an interesting note, it's not completed. It's not really finished. It starts out as a book and kind of finishes off as notes. I've read it. And unless you think that the book is maybe not that bad or whatever, it gets to the gross stuff, and I mean the really, really, really gross stuff, like within 3 pages. So the book deserves all of the reputation that it has, and the movie, while not necessarily a completely accurate portrayal of the book, we'll get to that in a second, really does incorporate a lot of it, including a lot of the awful stuff into it. So fair warning of what you're getting yourself into. The movie is made by a director named Pier Paolo Pasolini, who I'm not that familiar with his work, but he is fairly well known. And interestingly enough, he was murdered a couple of weeks after the movie came out. And I don't think it had anything to do with the movie per se, but it's an interesting note because he took the Marquis de Sade book, that was set in 18th century France, and moved it to the Mussolini era Italy to make commentary on the fascism of the regime. So you can maybe see why maybe he would have been murdered for that reason. From what I understand, that has nothing to do with anything, but it's interesting because he was trying to make a political commentary with this movie, which gives it a little bit of a historical importance and a little bit more of an artistic merit than you might think of from the description that I gave you about it earlier. because it's trying to comment on fascism and power and wealth and basically the subjugation and abuse and exploitation of the lower class or the less powerful. And is it successful in that? Yeah, kind of. And it's a very well made movie. I want to point that out. The movie is extremely well made, but it's gross. The subject matter is gross, and the actual events in the movie are gross. And I don't want to get too into it, A, because I don't want to spoil it for people who might want to watch it who haven't, but B, to disturb the people who don't want to hear about it. But we're gonna kind of touch on what's in here so that so that you are well armed. So a bunch of children are kidnapped. They're mostly around teenage age. Some of them are a little bit younger. There is a lot of sexual assault, a lot of sex in general in the movie. There is corpophagia, and if you don't know what that is, look it up. But that's probably the most notorious of the things that are in here. There is, of course, torture, violence, murder, disfigurement, all kinds of torture stuff. There's a lot of scatological stuff. There's incestual stuff. Just think of any awful taboo thing, especially any awful taboo sex related thing that you can think of, and it's in the movie. Now, not all of it is shown explicitly or graphically, but a lot of it is. Corpophagia, it, it's an ordeal, man. And this is the stuff that's very true to the book. Like, the corpophagia winds up being, like, in page 3 of the book. Like, it's all in there, and it's demented. It's demented is what it is. It's not a good time, but it is a good movie. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but the movie is extremely well made, and it's extremely upsetting and disturbing, and it riles you up. It makes you mad. It outrages you, which is why I'm pretty sure what the director was trying to do, but he was trying to do it in a political sense because he was, living in a regime. You're talking about a regime that is not that would be kind of like this. You know what I mean? I mean, some of it might be allegorical, some of it might not be, but the feeling of oppression being portrayed on the screen would have been the feeling by the people being oppressed by that government. So in that sense, and I don't know enough about the Italian government to really speak, this is what I think the director is trying to say. I'm not an expert. Let me just be clear. I'm not an expert on Italian politics or Italian history. But this is what I think the director is trying to say. And so I think he's very effective in saying that. I think he's accomplishing what he's trying to do. It does rile me up. It does get me worked up. It does make me angry. It's not exactly a fun ride. There's nothing sexy going on in this movie at all. Despite the fact that like it looks like there's like a naked woman on the cover of this or whatever. I mean, even from the pose, you can see she ain't having a good time. You're not going to really have a good time either. So like it almost kind of sounds like I'm recommending and not recommending this movie at the same time, because I am kind of recommending and not recommending this movie at the same time. But you have to have the stomach for it. You have to have the constitution for it. If this stuff doesn't get to you too much, check this movie out and see if you think it's got artistic merit. It's widely considered to have artistic merit. Again, like for those of you that are in the know, this is the Criterion collection set. It's like a nice set of this movie. I had a bootleg of it, and then I upgraded to this because I'm just so impressed by the fact that A, they made it, and B, that it's really, really good. And if you know anything about, if you collect physical media and you know anything about Criterion collection, you know that the criteria for their selections is they tend to do art movies. So you can see that generally speaking, it's considered an art movie, but it sure sounds like an exploitation movie when I describe it, doesn't it? Like it sure sounds like it's just like awful, gross, gory, like perverted things for the sake of it. But I don't think it's for the sake of it. I think it's to send a very visceral message. Message received, Pasolini. Message received. I've given you my thoughts on it. I do like the movie. I don't feel compelled to watch again. It's not one that you throw on, and it's definitely not like a party movie or anything like that. It is, once again, it's an ordeal. It's a a badge of honor to be able to say you've watched the movie in a weird sort of way, but you don't have to. Like, you don't get a prize for it. There's no ribbon or anything like that. They don't send you a certificate. So if this is not your bag, don't watch it. I do think it has artistic merit. I do think that there is a historical importance to this movie, but your life's not going to be changed by it. You can go your whole life and never see this movie and be perfectly fine. But I do think it has merit. I don't think that it's garbage. I discussed in a previous video about Cannibal Holocaust and how I just can't. No, I don't feel like this movie or any of these movies really kind of fall into that kind of character, that kind of category for me, or that kind of territory. I do think they have merit. I do think they have reasons for it. And the things on this movie are by and large simulated. So, take comfort in that, I guess. But hey, man, if it's not for you, it's not for you. It's cool. Don't watch it. But I do think it has merit. So if you are intrigued by it, or if you are brave enough to watch it, check it out. And I would like to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. Do you think it has artistic merit? Do you think it's trash? Let us know. And our final movie to talk about today, our postgraduate level selection, our most extreme selection today, is it's a Serbian film. And come on, you knew this was coming, right? I mean, this is probably the most notorious extreme horror film out there, right? This is the one that people cite to go to as the extreme, the pinnacle, right? This is the endurance test of all endurance tests. This is the one that people uh, brag about having seen or refuse to see. This is the movie, right? For those of you that are unfamiliar with it, a Serbian film comes out in 2010, and it's the story of a retired porn star who's trying to get out of the business, and he's settling down with his wife and his kid. But money's a little tight, and he gets enticed to go back into the business to make one more movie for this eccentric rich guy who wants to make some sort of like art house pornographic statement film. Uh, and winds up getting more than he bargained for as he realizes what he's really been signed up for and now is trapped into doing is maybe more of like a snuff film. And now he's stuck. And we'll leave it at that and to not spoil the film in case you want to see it, or just, not to disturb you too much. But we have to talk a little bit about what's going on in this film and why is it so notorious. Um, a Serbian film, as I said, is that movie that people point to as like the worst of the worst. And while we could, some of us, real deep cut horror buffs, maybe quibble that we've seen things worse than a Serbian film, and I would quibble that maybe I have. Um, I think everybody can agree that it's pretty bad, especially for just a regular mainstream horror person or a lay non horror fan. Don't even look at it. Don't even say the name. It's rough. It really is. There is, like the other movies we've talked about, some really shocking, disturbing, taboo stuff in here. I mean, first of all, it's set up in the porn world, so already you've got taboo porn stuff. And as I mentioned, it kind of goes into a snuff area, so you can kind of deduce where you're going with that. But there's a lot of stuff here with like pedophilia type things going on in here, incestual type things going on here, a lot of sexual violence type stuff going on here. It's really insane and really gross. Now, unlike some of the other movies we talked about, it's a little less graphic in terms of what it's showing you. A little less graphic. Um, some of the stuff is a little bit more implied than visually shown. It's not quite pornographic exactly, but I'm splitting hairs here, man. Like even though the implication is kind of maybe the implication is bad, like it's really bad implications. And the stuff that's still shown is still really rough. It's really bad. So I don't want to sugarcoat it for you. The movie is I mean, when I say it's not for everybody, it's not for most people. Like, um, I do appreciate the movie. It's weird to say I like the movie. I guess I do like the movie, but I never really want to watch it again per se. And as a testament to that, I just recently found out that this copy that I have is actually like slightly edited. It's missing like a minute worth of footage. It's supposed to be uncut, but apparently there is actually an additional minute of horribleness that's been cut from this version. And there is a version of it that has been released now. I think it's a Blu-ray version that has that extra minute in there. And I was gonna seek it out so I could watch it before this review. And you know what? I just didn't feel like it. I didn't feel like I needed to see that. Maybe I will at some point because just curiosity alone to see, well, what is that extra minute? What's so bad that it couldn't make it into the quote unquote uncut version? So maybe I'll get around to doing that at some point. But yeah, I just didn't feel like it. I couldn't bring myself to like, I don't really feel like watching a Serbian film again. I've seen it once and I remember it pretty well. And yeah, we'll just talk about it now. So that kind of gives you an idea. Like, yeah, did I like the movie? Yeah, I thought it was really good. It's really well made. The lead actor who plays Milos, I think is the name of the character, and I don't remember the actor's name, but he's really great. He's very charismatic and likable, and given that who he is and the stuff he winds up doing in the movie, you wouldn't think that he'd be a likable person, but the actor does an amazing job of making you like him and getting you to kind of get on his side. And that's important because if you're not on his side, the movie's really going to spiral fast for you. It's going to spiral anyways, but he'll keep you into it longer than I would have thought. And that's, I think, a testament to the actor that he's able to do that. It's also, again, like a really well made movie. It's really shot well, and it's disturbing. The beats hit you. They hit you at the right time. It's paced well, and it really is just like a punch in the gut followed by a punch in the face followed by just it beats you up. It beats you up. It's like a ride. It's a ride. It's a gruesome ride. It's if you're like one of those people that wants to try one of those extreme horror haunted houses where they like basically terrorize you, then this is the kind of movie that you would probably be like, yeah, this is a cool experience for me. I don't think I'm that kind of person, but I did enjoy the movie, but I don't want to watch it again. Um, as for like artistic merit, like I talked about Antichrist, I talked about Salo. I think that those movies do have something to say and say it well. I think that's maybe less true with Serbian film. Like I did some research on this, and the director talked about how the movie is supposed to be a commentary on Serbian film culture and the Serbian government and PC culture in Serbia. He's trying to make a comment about how they sanitize their films and everything's very PC and safe. And so he was trying to like thumb his nose at that and kind of basically just do the opposite and go to the extreme, the other direction. I ain't buying it. I feel like that falls short. Like the other explanations that we talked about, like Pasolini's whole thing about commentary on fascism, I buy it. I'm into it. This one, sorry guy, I don't buy it. I feel like you're kind of just if this one feels more like an exploitation movie than the others. It feels less like commentary, social commentary, or art, and more like exploitation. Just really, really well made exploitation that goes to the extreme. And here's the thing, we've talked about exploitation before. I like that stuff. I'm down for it. I've got thick skin. I'm down for a good, gross time. And this movie doesn't bother me as much as it does some people. There are people that have seen it that are traumatized by it. There are people that won't see it because they know they'll be traumatized by it. I have nothing but respect for those people and their feelings on it. I a little bit thicker skin than that, so I don't feel traumatized by it, but I recognize what it is. It's gross. It's insane. It's demented. It's perverse. Maybe I'll revisit it again sometime in the future and see with an eye towards, do I really see the parody in here? Do I see the parody of the PC Serbian culture? But I don't think I will. I think that's a flimsy justification for an exploitation film. That's what I think. But it does have a reputation for a reason. If you are a horror fan who really wants to get like your gold star or whatever, there's no real gold star, by the way, so just get that out of your head. But if you kind of want to be able to say, like, I've seen everything and I'm up for everything and I'll tackle everything or I'll give everything a chance, go for it, man. See Serbian film. If you've seen it, let us know your thoughts on it. Is there an artistic angle that I'm missing on this? Like I said, I think it's a well-made movie, and maybe it is trying to say something. I think it might miss the mark. But if you feel differently, share that with us. Let us know what your thoughts are on that. I'd love to hear them. And if you haven't seen Serbian film, well, then you already probably know it by this point whether or not you want to see Serbian film. And so make your decision, make it carefully. It's got a reputation for a reason. The people that have seen it, who decry it, they ain't wrong. So listen to that. Make your decision wisely. And then let me know what you decided. I'd love to hear if you haven't seen it and you choose to watch it. I would definitely like to hear what your experience is like. So leave that in the comments if you please. So that's gonna do it for our trepidatious ride through the most extreme horror movies. But we do have a few extra credit movies to get through still. We'll talk about them. The first one we're going to talk about is called The House That Jack Built, and it's a 2018 film by Lars von Trier, who we just talked about a little while ago. And it stars Matt Dillon as a serial killer recounting stories of kills he's done in the past. And it's got a reputation again for being a pretty rough ride, a pretty extreme horror film, and it's a well-deserved reputation. But it's also kind of this allegory for Dante's Inferno and the levels of hell. Um, and like we've talked about with other movies that we've talked about previously here, debatable how successful he is with the allegory. It maybe to some people feels more like trying to be art than actually being art. And I would, in this movie in particular, understand that critique and not necessarily challenge it. I do like the movie. I do think it's really good. I also feel like the extreme reputation or the taboo reputation of it may be slightly overblown simply by comparison with the movies we've already talked about. Compared to those other movies, this movie will feel a little bit tame, a little bit. That said, it's still pretty extreme and pretty graphic. We've got people being murdered in there, people being tortured in there, people being psychologically tortured, emotionally tortured, children being killed. That's a big one. That's probably the most disturbing thing in the movie, to be honest with you. So there's plenty of taboo stuff that there's going to be a rough watch. It's going to be a trigger. It's going to be an issue. So be aware of that. It's also an incredibly great performance by Matt Dillon. If you know him from things like Something About Mary, or he's done a ton of work, but you might know him as a likable, fun, or happy person. He's done other dark work before, but I think he's probably most famous for, lighter stuff or charming stuff or, things where he's a likable guy. And in this movie, he is not. I mean, he has a modicum of charm, but it's a modicum of it. It's not a lot. He really goes to some dark places and gives an amazing performance. Something that I wouldn't have thought him capable of. If you told me, what the script was, Matt Dillon's not the guy I would have chose for this, but he crushes it. He really is fantastic here. And the movie does have some really interesting, bizarre, dark moments of comedy in it. Unlike, say, Antichrist, which we talked about earlier, Antichrist has no comedy. It's not fun. There's no fun at all in that movie. It's just depressing. The House of Jack Built has a little bit of fun in it. Again, dark, dark, dark sense of humor. Really gruesome and inappropriate sense of humor, but there's some funny stuff in there. There's one thing, and it's kind of shown in the trailer, so I don't feel like it's a spoiler to say. He kills a woman, but he suffers from like OCD, so he cleans up and he's trying to leave, but his OCD keeps telling him that he might have left something, so he keeps having to go back in and re-clean the crime scene before he leaves. Meanwhile, the cops are coming, and he's risking getting caught because he can't stop cleaning. And it actually plays off really funny, even though it's really dark. So I liked this. I like this kind of juxtaposition, this weird comedy kind of shoehorned in. There's some stuff in the movie I don't like. There's some scenes that just feel unnecessary. It's really a film where Lars von Trier kind of feels a little self-indulgent, more so than maybe in his other movies when he might be saying something. And other reviews, we'll go into this. If you've watched like some other people review this movie, they'll kind of talk a little bit, criticize it a little bit for Lars von Trier being a little self-indulgent here, maybe kind of trying to make a statement about himself here and the way he feels like he gets treated. Sure. Yeah, I think that's probably accurate, and it maybe takes away from the movie a little bit. I don't think it's the masterpiece that Antichrist is. I don't think it's the work of art Antichrist is. I think it's a little bit more exploitation, a little bit less artistic, but I still think it's really good. Like, again, I think the artistic aspect of it, like the Dante's Inferno stuff, kind of gets shoehorned in a little bit, but I do think it's good. I liked the movie very much, and it's because it's not as rough to me. I think it's one I might revisit again. I would probably appreciate some of the stuff a little bit better if I could watch it with a little bit more of an eye towards the artistic thing. Maybe I'd see more of the art in it, or maybe not. Maybe it is as flimsy as I do. It's a precariously balanced movie. It might be art, it might be exploitation, maybe it's both. Does it have merit? Yeah, I think the movie's good. Again, not for everybody. If you don't watch it, you're not, your life's gonna be the same. But I like it, and it's maybe goes down a little bit smoother than a lot of the other movies on this list. The next movie that we're going to talk about for extra credit is called Guinea Pig, or specifically, we're going to talk about Guinea Pig 2, Flower of Flesh and Blood. The Guinea Pig series is Japanese movies, and they're kind of designed to look like snuff films. They use practical effects, but they basically look like somebody being tortured and murdered. And there's like a series of I think 6 of them. And as they go on, they get weirder and weirder. Like at some point, they're dealing with like mermaids and stuff. Like I don't know, but the first couple of them really kind of go with the snuff film idea, like somebody's been kidnapped or captured or whatever, and they're just being tortured and killed. And the reason why we're talking about Guinea Pig 2, Flower of Flesh and Blood, rather than the first one or any of the other ones, why I'm specifying that one, is because of it's the most notorious one. Because of a story that maybe somewhat is urban legend, but seems to be true from my research, that the actor Charlie Sheen saw a copy of this movie like on VHS or something back in the day, and because this maybe came out in the 80s, he saw it back in the day and thought it was a real snuff film. He believed it. He believed that he was seeing a woman being murdered, tortured, murdered, and chopped up on film. And he called the FBI, and the FBI went to investigate, and the filmmakers had to actually show the practical effects they used to create this illusion. And that cracks me up. That story cracks me up. I love that story. I believe it's true. I want to believe it's true. I hope it's true. And God bless Charlie Sheen for trying to get something taken care of there. Good for him. The movie does look pretty realistic. The gore effects pretty darn good. Really really realistic. But I don't like these movies. I've only seen the first couple of them, and I was able to get a copy of all of them. You have to get bootleg copies. These are not commercially available, as far as I know. And I've watched the first couple of them. I'll be honest with you, man. I don't like them. And it's not because my precious sensibilities or anything like that. I've told you I've got a thick skin. The gore stuff is actually pretty great. It's really shockingly looks real. It looks really compelling, and they've done a pretty good job of trying to make it seem like a real film, like a real snuff type film. I appreciate the effort. It's just boring. The first couple movies, including The Flower, Flesh, and Blood, it's just boring. It's literally just watching somebody be tortured and chopped up. We haven't gotten to the torture porn subgenre yet. And it's got its own controversies like that. But one of the things we'll talk about, and we'll just kind of touch on it a bit here, is that just watching somebody be tortured or torn apart or whatever, and without anything else to it, there's not. I don't know. For me, that's not tremendously satisfying. Like I guess I can appreciate a good gore gag. I love me some Tom Savini, and the gore in here is done really really well. But there's just not a lot. There's nothing else to it. You're just watching like sadistically watching somebody get torn up. And hey, if that's for you, okay, good for you. It's not for most people, I would say. There's not much to it. There's no real story involved. There's no, the art is in the art of the craft, the art of them trying to make this look very, very real. And I can appreciate that and respect that for what it is. But from a story standpoint, I tend to be a story kind of guy. I'm a narrative kind of guy. I like a story, There really isn't one. You're just watching somebody get tormented for longer than you need to. And I got bored. I got bored watching them. And that's why I haven't even finished the series, even though they sound like they get really weird and maybe that'd be a little more interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I just found it to be dull. I really wasn't tremendously interested in it. There are better ways to spend my time, more interesting ways to spend my time. So, Guinea Pig, maybe more notorious than it needs to be. Like I said, that Charlie Sheen story kind of builds that notoriety out a little bit more. Like it's so extreme and it looks so real. It does look real for the most part. Like, if you know about filmmaking stuff, you can probably kind of see like, well, somebody making their home video of killing somebody probably wouldn't stop to set that angle up or whatever. Yeah, so there's some of that stuff. But yeah, like it looks very real. There's that notoriety of it. But honestly, your time would be better spent watching pretty much any other movie that we've talked about on this list than this one. So if you've seen it, if you've seen the other ones, especially if you've seen the later ones that get weird, let me know about them in the comments. I'd like to hear a little bit about your thoughts on that. But if you have an opinion on Guinea Pig, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on it, because I'm underwhelmed by it. I think it's boring. I don't really like it. I don't think it's a good use of the time. They're short, but like I said, you could watch an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. you know. Um, but let me know what you guys think. If you agree or disagree, if you have any thoughts on it. And the last movie that we're going to talk about today for extreme horror as an action credit movie is a movie called Pig, not to be confused with Guinea Pig. And now Pig came out in 2010 allegedly, and I say allegedly because this movie is not commercially available. It's just kind of been shown periodically. It's never really been released. In fact, I've never seen it. I have spent some time trying to track down a copy of it, and I have not been able. I have definitely have not been able to find a physical copy of it yet, and I haven't even found one online now. I don't really traipse into the dark web stuff, and I'm sure I could probably find a copy of it there, but that's not really my bag. So I haven't actually seen it. So all I know about it is its reputation, and this is one of those movies that like only like the deep cut horror fans have probably heard about because it's not commercially available. It's not well seen, and by those who have seen it, it doesn't seem like it's very well loved. From what I understand, it's a movie about a guy torturing people, and it's kind of shot found footage style slash uncut, like a continuous shot type thing, and it's just a guy torturing people and I think putting them in cages. That's the kind of the only thing I really know about it. I've seen images from it, and it looks like it's shot really crappily, like a digital camera or something like that, like a only Sony Handycam or something. Like it looks bad, which of course adds to the verisimilitude of the premise of found footage, right? So I mean, Blair Witch Project looks bad too, and it just makes it all the scarier. So perhaps that is very effective in Pig. I don't know again because I haven't seen it, but by all accounts, by the few reviews I can find of it and stuff like that, it sounds like it's kind of garbage. It sounds like it's not very good. It sounds like it's not made very well. It sounds like it's not very interesting, and it sounds like it's just kind of a slog to get through. Again, not unlike Guinea Pig, just somebody tormenting and torturing people, and that's pretty much it. I mostly want to see it out of curiosity. It's supposed to be like this really demented and gross and graphic and extreme movie, and I just can't help myself. I want to see that, but I haven't put a tremendous amount of effort into it. Like I said, I'm not going to go to any extremes to try to see it. Um, and the more I do research on it, the less interested I am in it because it does sound like it might be maybe not that interesting, not that worth my time. Um, if I do ever come across it, maybe I'll throw up a video reviewing it or something like that and let you know what I think about it. But as of this point, I can only tell you what I've heard, which is, really, really extreme, really, really gross, not particularly good, just about somebody torturing people in cages, kind of found footage. That's what I know about it. If you've seen it and you know about it, please, please, please tell us in the comments about it. I would like to hear from somebody who has seen it, knows what it's about, and can give an opinion on it that's a little bit more informed than me. I wanted to bring it up here because, again, it's got this notoriety, almost mythic notoriety, because nobody's seen it, and I have a feeling that it doesn't live up to the reputation. That's my expectation, is that it's going to be a major disappointment. It's not going to live up to this mythic reputation that it has. So if you have seen it, let me know. Does it live up to that reputation, or is it really a letdown? Please let me know in the comments if you've seen it. So that's going to do it for this week's video. Thank you for bearing with our exploration into some really, rough stuff. The extreme horror is not for everybody, as I've said multiple times, and it's got some really dark, really gross, really offensive or inappropriate stuff. And we had to touch on a lot of it. It's something that I felt compelled to mention here as kind of a primer for people who might want to experience some of these things but aren't sure if they can roll with it. If there's anything that sounds like it would be interesting for you to see but you're not sure if you can handle it, do a little additional research first. Find some other people talking about it who maybe spill the beans a little bit more if you're worried about being triggered or things like that. Check out doesthedogdie.com. So, Sarah Hawkinson mentioned this one to me not too long ago as a website that people can use to find out if there are triggering events in a movie. I'm a big fan of having a separate website so that if you don't want spoilers, you don't have to have them. But if you need to know that stuff in advance, you have a resource for that. I don't know if all these movies are on there, but I would imagine they are. At least the ones that were on the syllabus proper. So do yourself a favor. Prep yourself before checking anything out. And if you have seen it, let us know your thoughts. Again, I want to get those comments going. And some of the people who haven't seen these movies might appreciate your thoughts about the movies you have seen in the comments down below. So please don't be shy. Share your thoughts. With that, I'll go ahead and thank you guys again for sticking with me through this one. And and for just being supportive in general, and just being really cool viewers and friends. So thanks very much for everything. Until next week, class dismissed.